on the 3rd of October, there's this national holiday, the German reunification day. And the Muslims have decided that they're going to make it the day of the open mosque or something like this. Now, I'm always told, well, why don't you go to Muslims? If you want to know something, don't go to Fox News, don't go to blah, blah, blah. Just take it from the Muslims. So I got it from the Muslims in the Middle East. And then people still say, yeah, but now you are no longer in the Middle East. Why don't you go and get it from Imam? Well, I went to Imam and he talked absolute bullshit. So I went to the mosque here. And I asked them some questions, and I found some people there, and I said, okay, how do you young Muslims handle the 21st century in Europe? How do you handle this? And the people were saying, well, it's very easy because we have our guideline, which is the Quran. And I said, yeah, but what happens if the Quran were to say 1 + 1 = 3? Would you question the Quran or would you question reality? And they said, we will not question the Quran. And I said, well, how do you manage to get this all together, reality today and the Quran and all the different mistakes and all the inconsistencies and all these things? And they would not comment. And they said, come back when the Imam is here, come back on the 3rd of October. So that's what I did. 3rd of October, went there. And I went and attended a lecture on how wonderful and beautiful and brilliant Islam is, and did the show of the mosque. And it's a large mosque, okay? And all the rooms, and where they do the tuition, the teaching of young pupils, and how they teach Arabic and things like that, and how they are like a community center for all the people who come there. And I said, oh, that's very interesting. Well, what happens, you, for example, as a lady now, what happens if I come to you and I want to shake your hand? And she says, well, yeah, it's a little bit of a problem, but now here I do accept it because it's the standard. And I said, well, you greeted us with the Islamic greeting of Assalamu alaikum, but what happens if somebody comes to you with a German greeting of shaking hands? Well, yeah. And she was sort of, but in the end, I accept it. So I said, okay, so you accept these things. What about then about the text? Do you accept those as well? No comment. Go speak to the Imam. I said, well, where is this Imam? Well, he's downstairs because now they're praying and now they will be out in 10 minutes. Okay. So I go downstairs again and here comes the Imam. Small little guy, but he doesn't speak German. Okay. So they got some guy from Turkey. I don't know who pays him. And he's standing there smiling and that's it. He just speaks Arabic and he speaks some Turkish, but no German. But he's got some guys around him. Now what happens is these guys say, okay, we hear that you have a question. I said, yes, this is a question that nobody so far has been able to answer. So what I'd like to know from you is if we are in the 21st century and we have all this internet, all the information available to us, how does it work for Muslims? Are they allowed to get this information? And how do you handle this information? And what do you teach these young people? Because I was told today in the lecture and here during the tour that you have rooms where you provide tuition for Muslims. And he said, yes. I said, okay, how do you treat this topic? How do you handle this when it comes to the various inconsistencies, all the contradictions and the blatant errors in the Quran? And I thought, well, he's going to say, here we go. And what we do is we look at them and we challenge them and blah, blah. But this guy went apeshit. He started throwing his fists at me. And then his sidekick started shouting at me. He says, I am the I don't know, the spokesperson for the so-and-so gremium of this and this council, and I am the representative in the whatever environment for these people and in this group, and I am this. And I said, well, so what? You know, I'm asking a question. I didn't ask you for your credentials. I've asked you a question. How do you handle this? Can you answer the question or not? If you don't want to answer it, then just let me know. And this seems to really have got to, because now he stuck his finger almost up my nose and he was waving his hands, and then I could see literally froth building in his mouth, how he was screaming at me, calling me a liar, calling me all sorts of names because I asked this question. And he said, "You don't have anything. You don't know what you're talking about. I studied Islam." I said, "Well, so have I. So what? We just have a difference in opinion here. I can show you a mistake in the Quran if you want. I mean, you know, what would you like me to do? If you go to chapter 2, sentence 1, this is an inconsistency. You don't understand what it says. Only Allah knows. So you are trusting a book that you don't even understand. So you are telling me that you are getting guidance from a book you don't know what it says. The second thing is, if you want a mistake, well, just go to chapter 4, go sentences 11, 12, and 176, go and look at the inheritance, go and add it all up. There's a mistake there. It doesn't work. Yes, but you can do this, but you can proportion this. I said, okay, what does it say in the Quran? Show me in the Quran. Poof! And now he went totally ballistic, and he went and threw his fists at me, and three guys had to sit down. They had to like carry him out of there to leave me alone. He went totally apeshit. He was screaming, and everybody was standing around there, and I was just smiling gracefully. I didn't do anything. And then when they took him out, yeah, sure, I tell you, he was still screaming out there in the car park. It was absolutely brilliant. And then what was interesting, a lady next to me was sort of leaning against the table, and she looked at me, and then she sort of cocked her head and said, "You like provoking people, don't you?" And I smiled and I said, "Oh, sure I do. Absolutely I do." And I said, "But then the thing is, everybody should be able to handle this, because all I did is ask a question, how Muslims handle this." And she says, "Well, what did you ask?" I said, "That's all I asked." She says, "And he went ballistic because of that?" I said, "Yes." He says, "But the answer is very easy." And she presented it, and she gave me, some explanation, and this was great. So now I was in a conversation with her, and now others joined in, and all of a sudden I was surrounded, and it was all females. I don't know why. All of a sudden I had like 6 or 7 females, and they wanted to know, okay, why am I
and your aftershave stops?
It must be pheromones or something. No. It was just that they just happened to come along and they heard this, and I think this was the female curiosity, as opposed to men who were afraid that I was going to challenge them. And then they asked me questions, and they realized that I was reasonable, that I was just asking questions which anybody could answer, which anybody was entitled to ask, and there was nothing wrong with that. And that this was brilliant. And then I had people, and then they left, and then an old lady came, and she said, "Yeah, but what is wrong with you? How can you ask this question?" I said, "There's nothing wrong with it. How do you answer this question?" "Yeah, but we know that in the Quran there is nothing wrong, and we know that even doctors and embryologists and everybody said that everything is correct in the Quran." I said, "Lady, if that is what you believe, if that is at the center of your belief, if that is the way that you test your belief, then I feel sorry for you, because none of that is true. So you need to acknowledge that we live in the 21st century. We know what is true and what is not. And if you base your belief on science and on doctors telling you something, there is something wrong with your belief." So anyway, that was the whole story. I thought it was hilarious. I thought it was really funny the way that this guy went totally ballistic because he could not answer a question, because it strikes at the heart of Islam at the moment, where we have so many Muslims in the 21st century realizing there's something wrong here. And this is why so many are leaving. And I think this is just indicative of what happened there last Wednesday.
But Stops, what about the part that you talked about where the lady said something and you said, "Thank goodness you know, to her daughter that you've got this, her for a mother"?
Oh yeah, well, one of the girls happened to, she asked me a question, and I saw the external likeness, and I said, and because now this lady was talking to somebody else, and the younger girl was asking me something, and then I answered this and blah blah blah. I said, "Oh, is this lady your mother?" And she said yes, and I said to her, "Wow, you must be very proud of her, because she's a wonderful woman." Now, this girl was so totally flabbergasted, because in her eyes, her mother had just set me right, had just told me that there is an answer to my question, how Muslims handle this. And now I am telling her that her mother is fantastic, that I could see the disbelief in her eyes, how I was semi-flirting with her mother through her, telling her that her mother was great when her mother had just told me that I'm an idiot. But that's not the point. I did not go there to trigger anybody. I did not go there to expose anybody. I just wanted to know what they teach and what they say about these things. The same thing as I went to Mishka and I said to them, listen, guys, do you really teach that there is anything of scientific whatever in there? And they said no. So they will not allow this. Where this guy Kenny, he said yes, he heard this from Mishka. So this is also hypocritical, where they are saying on the one hand no, we don't, but internally they do. So in the mosque, when I ask them what is it that you teach the people, they are too afraid to say what they are actually teaching people. And this, I think, is quite worrying in my eyes anyway, if we can't go to a mosque and get an honest answer.